I see in your eyes the same fear that would take the heart of me. A day may come when the courage of men fails, when we forsake our friends and break all bonds of fellowship. But it is not this day. An hour of wolves and shattered shields when the age of men comes crashing down. But it is not this day. This day we fight. By all that you hold dear on this good earth, I bid you stand, men of the West!
The next handful of minutes, believe it or not, are brought to you by Grapplex. Grapplex, it won't come undone. Or it will. Whatever's sexier.
Grapplex message. Hi, Ray Dacron is my name, and the name of the CEO of Grapplex. So there's this thing, t-shirts. Have you ever seen one? What about feel, though? But have you ever, for example, held one? Or even worn it on your own body? Well, then, here's a t-shirt. This is one made to celebrate the sports entertainment enthusiast in all of us. Even down to the color. Raw red. Raw red. Yes, it's available for purchase. Sure. What size are you? Now available at ProWrestlingTees.com/Joel Gertner.
Trying to smile, but the air is so heavy. Hey y'all, it's episode 19 of the 69-minute Eargasm. I'm Grant Fletcher, and with me as always is our host, the quintessential stud muffin, Joel Gertner. Joel, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, dude. Pretty good. And what a hell of an episode we have up ahead. I'm really excited about it. A good buddy of mine, a great friend of the wrestling business, just somebody who's really contributed so much, and the interview is gonna, I think a lot of people are gonna be really interested to hear a lot of what he has to say. This is somebody who you kind of see him in different forums within pro wrestling. You think about him all the time, but as far as a sit-down interview, they're quite rare, but he's got a wealth of wisdom, and it's really going to be one hell of an interview and one hell of an episode.
Yeah, really, this is an Eargasm exclusive. As you'll say here, he does have a book out there, Is Wrestling Fixed? I didn't know it was broken. You can find that on Amazon. He's done a lot of interviews himself, but there's some stuff in this talk here that he's never brought up in any other interview before. This is the first time you're going to hear a lot of what we're going to hear, in this particular interview.
Yeah, there's one or two rarities for sure. It's definitely, not a cookie cutter kind of run of the mill interview. And this is not somebody who gives up an hour of his time freely, here, there, and everywhere to everybody. It was just an awesome honor to have the opportunity to ask him all these questions and to get all of the different answers that really just a unique perspective. I'm so stoked about it.
Yeah, we made you wait for a long time for this episode, but I can assure you it was worth the wait. And, a big thanks to that really is for our sponsor, Grapplex, for bringing us back, though.
Yeah, always thank you, Grapplex. Thank you, Grapplex. There, but for the grace of Grapplex go we. We've made it to another week. We've made it to another episode. Thank you, Ray Dacron. Thank you, and just thank you for keeping the fires burning within the loins of the Eargasm. This is a great episode, again, through the help of Grapplex. I'm sure we'll be playing one of their ads this week. Buy a Grapplex shirt at prowrestlingtees.com /Joel Gertner. They've allowed me to house it at my store. They're on Pro Wrestling Tees, so prowrestlingtees.com /Joel Gertner. They have forced me to have it on my store, my personal store, and that's absolutely okay with me. I would do that nonetheless. There are a couple of other designs up there at the store too, like one for Pittsburgh football fans and everybody else. Whether you're a fan of Pittsburgh football or whether you're a fan of people who like Pittsburgh football or just Pittsburgh or just football, just T-shirts, whether you like apparel and clothing, whether you like something that adorns your body, whether you like your body, whether you like yourself. And if you can't like your body, you can't have an eargasm. And if you can't have an eargasm, then I'm obviously not talking to you right now, and you're not listening because you wouldn't be here seeking and in search of an eargasm. So, moot point and fruitless venture in it. Yeah. So, go buy a T-shirt.
Exactly. Yeah, listen to the show all the way through, have you an eargasm, and then get you a Grapplex T-shirt at prowrestlingtees.com /Joel Gertner. Have you a bodygasm. You'll be supporting a great product, too, and a great guy, Ray Dacron is. He called me at 3 a.m. the other day. We talked for about...
Ray Dacron's a great guy.
Yeah, about like 2.5 hours. He's a visionary, is all I could say.
He called you at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
Your time.
My time, yeah. Central Standard Time, yes.
Yeah, I believe that. And you guys talked for a couple of hours while you were half asleep.
Yeah, we did. I don't know.
It's the best way to receive one of those phone calls.
Where is he located? Do you even know?
Herzegovina.
Oh, wow.
Which is, Herzegovina, which is, when he's there, he's never there. He has, we can call them homes, scattered throughout, all different places where people might dwell. I
I don't want to go too much into his business, right? Because again, everything with them is kind of on a week to week, and they could pull the plug at any time. And they're the ones again who supply us with the funds that come from the sales of Grapplex stuff, including my store, my Pro Wrestling Tees store. For Grapplex is one place where their stuff is sold, and hopefully more of it. Go there and definitely put them over, because not that I need it, but they could use it. But Herzegovina is it's a place.
Yeah,
and I think that's really the most you could say about it.
I have heard it's a place. That is true. Yeah.
I mean, it exists. I think. I mean, I'll take the guys. I mean, I could be pronouncing it wrong. I don't think I am. Hurts. It starts with Hertz.
Right.
For sure.
You can look
it's
it up
in Europe.
on Wikipedia. You can get the pronunciation there.
Yeah.
For sure. And in the interest of being fully transparent, we did sign non-disclosure agreements. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really read mine, so we could be violating it right now.
Dude, yeah, like I'm afraid. Oh, yeah, I'm afraid to speak when we do these. Yeah, when you call me on these calls, I'm always afraid, especially when it goes to Grapplex. I'm afraid. I put myself in that mentality of like, what do I say? Because we signed those NDAs. Ironically, if I remember correctly, they laid in front of me at the same time an NDA and a force to talk. So like I am obligated to. I didn't know force to talk was a thing, but I am obligated to promote Grapplex at every turn. Like, in other words, so they're on my Pro Wrestling Tees store. So if I'm talking about Pro Wrestling Tees and my store there, which I don't want to, belabor the point and kind of beat a dead horse here. But if you haven't gone to the Pro Wrestling Tees store, it is prowrestlingtees.com/Joel Gertner. And every time I talk about it, on the Grapplex end, I am obligated to throw in that their stuff is carried there and to talk about them. And we can have conversations just like these that give people awareness of Grapplex. And at the same time that they made me sign, that they offered me to sign, thankfully, one of those, they also put in front of me a non-disclosure that I could never talk on a technical, financial, fiscal, design, casual, general, or other manner about Grapplex. And they one was on the left, and I don't remember which was on the left and which was on the right, but they kind of laid them, at my feet, so to speak, concurrently. And I signed them both, and I think that was the beginning of my confusion with Ray, which hasn't let up one bit since that moment. It's been what is an antonym for dreadful?
I don't know. We can look this up right now. Hold on. Let me go to the internet. I have the internet in my pocket right now. I can look this up.
Okay.
Hold on.
Is it pleasure?
It's gotta be.
What's the direct 360-degree antithetical pure opposite?
An antonym would be pleasant or agreeable.
It has been an extremely pleasant and agreeable scenario working with Grapplex.
Yeah, I don't. In the confusion,
if I'm allowed to say that.
Yeah, I think you are. I think that's actually probably you're supposed to say that. But and really, he confuses me too. I don't know if that's on purpose on his part or if that's just kind of the way he is or whatever. By the way, guys, if you hear some like shuffling going on behind me or something like that, I got a new dog and he just followed me into my recording space here. He's a pit bull. We've been calling him Iggy Pop. And anyway, he's playing with the toy in his chilling out
The
here
cutest.
behind me. So, but I'll put up some pictures of Iggy if you guys want to see him. He's a cute guy. I'll put him up
Put
on my
those
Twitter,
on
I'll
the
put 'em up
69-minute Eargasm Instagram.
Yeah.
Grant,
we'll
put them on the
up there.
Instagram page. Hey, people, have you been looking at the Instagram page, 69-minute Eargasm? Have you been looking at the Twitter page for 69-minute Eargasm? Show the podcast some love. Grant's got followers. I've got followers. What about the podcast? It's got a few followers, but we could do better. I know that we could all do better in supporting the 69-minute Eargasm on Twitter. If you follow me personally, people might expect from my over 25 years in the wrestling business and from the fact that I've been on Twitter now for almost 10 years, people might expect that I, on my primary Twitter account, Stud Muffin Says, would have some followers. But it really helps the show with exposure, and it looks good when we're talking to potential guests and stuff like that. It just gives us that kind of aura of looks like we made it on Twitter if you throw us a Twitter follow. So if you enjoy what we do here on the show and you listen to the podcast, please do follow us in all of our social media endeavors, and that would be 69-minute Eargasm on Instagram, where you will get pictures of Iggy Pup, and 69-minute Eargasm on Twitter. See, I don't mind shilling, Grant Fletcher. Don't mind it. I don't mind being a whore. Do not.
I mean, that's the nature of the business in some way or another, right? I mean, entertainment in general.
Yes.
Yeah, as an entertainer, you know all about that. Yeah, guys, he's at Stud Muffin Says on Twitter. I am at Grant L. Fletcher. Of course, check out the 69-minute Eargasm. And big thanks to everybody who's listening right now and who's listened to, our episodes before and now as well, all over the world. We've gotten a lot of love out there. So it's been really exciting to be a part
It's a great
of this
philosophical discussion is, am I only a whore because I'm an entertainer? If not for being an entertainer, would I still be a whore? Are they part and parcel? Are they hand in glove?
Or would you have found some other way to whore it up if you weren't an entertainer? Is that what you're saying?
You'd likely story. Yeah, probably.
I mean, you are
At
the
the end of the
quintessential
day.
Stud Muffin. You do offer the boyfriend experience when possible.
I do. Oh, that's right. Let's not forget the boyfriend experience, which is currently available on all exchanges at $1,795. And that's discounted for the summer. A lot of people buy in May and go away. So it used to be $1,845, but it's $1,795 now for the boyfriend experience. We take care of it on our end by just the champagne's just a little, not as whatever. It doesn't matter. It's who of us, who of the people buying the boyfriend experience is drinking champagne on the regular. Some people, but to some other people, it's not for the champagne anyway. I mean, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? That's not why. You know what I mean? You could buy a decent bottle of champagne anytime, anywhere. It doesn't matter. The boyfriend experience is for me, who accompanies the champagne. We'll get into it more at a later date because we've shilled so much that I think to shill the boyfriend experience almost might come across as comedy, but yeah, it's $1,795, and just if you're an able-bodied, at least I would say, think of yourself as relatively attractive, genetic female. Just keep it in the back of your mind, or if you're the boyfriend or husband of such, just understand that everybody has needs.
Yeah, guys, it's not comedy. It's very, very serious business. And hey,
Portion of the proceeds goes towards the podcast too, so that we could have the option one day of I'm not allowed to say this, but moving away from Grapplex. Like if they should ever cut the cord with us, and we should need to no longer be associated with Grapplex, and that definitely sounds like something that I'm violating, either the NDA or the whatever. But and we'll hear about it. Like you'll get another 3 a.m. call, and I apologize, but like you say, it's the nature of the beast. Yeah, just, again, the boyfriend experience, we just try to move as many of those a month as possible. So,
yeah, as I was saying, though, if you got a birthday coming up, you're not sure what to ask for, maybe consider asking around for the boyfriend experience or getting some people to chip in for that. By the way, Iggy Pup is asleep now. He fell asleep anyway. But I think that's probably a good signal that we've been talking too long. Maybe we should go ahead and throw to the episode. Joel, what do you say? You want to talk up our guest?
I say, ladies and gentlemen, if you've ever read a wrestling magazine, then you know who our guest is. If you are familiar at all with journalism within professional wrestling, you know who our guest is. Our guest is an innovator. Our guest is one of the great minds in professional wrestling, a proponent of professional wrestling, and an advocate of professional wrestling who has been making not only a living and a career, but making a lifestyle and his life out of professional wrestling. He has helped so many people, sometimes, probably most of the time, all the time, with nothing to gain from it personally himself. He is literally a friend of professional wrestling. I consider him a good friend and a confidant and somebody I can go to. He is a buddy of mine. I am thrilled and blessed that he did this interview, and you are going to hear things in this interview that you have not yet heard. Ladies and gentlemen, do not let this interview, by the way, this free interview, this podcast, get in the way of the entire book that this gentleman has written, because he wrote the book on writing pro wrestling books. Leave it to somebody who has been an authority on putting together entertaining and informative wrestling magazines to give you a wrestling book like none other. Listen to the whole interview and you will get all of the details on how you can get one of his books for your own. Ladies and gentlemen, he is the man, the one and the only, Bill Apter. And welcome back to the 69-minute eargasm, and a treat is what we have in store for all of you today. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not every day that we have a guest on our show that has so much knowledge of professional wrestling, so many years of involvement in professional wrestling, a multiple Hall of Famer, and perhaps the most recognized journalist that there has ever been in professional wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, the one, the only, Bill Apter. Bill, how are you?
Well. You have just given me an eargasm.
If 12-year-old me would have ever heard you just now saying, well, 12-year-old me probably been like, what the hell is well? But,
yeah, exactly.
But 12-year-old me would have popped out of his shoes.
Well,
thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, I've enjoyed what you do forever, since the first time I saw you back in ECW.
Well, if you're not just saying that to be kind, then
no, I'm not. No, I told you that. I told you that in person. No, I told you that in person.
Just, maybe you're just saying something to be nice, so that I'll kind of.
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. I say what's on my mind. I always enjoyed. It's funny because we're in the professional wrestling business, but it's a genre of entertainment, and I found you before the word entertainment was an everyday word in the professional wrestling business. You were entertaining people with your character, with your great character.
Mr. Apter, you complete me, and you had me at hello.
Well, I know that Kenny Chesney did that. That was from Jerry Maguire. You ready? You had me from hello. I felt love start to grow. The moment that I looked into your eyes, you had me. See? I
was a very, very eager participant at StarCast in Las Vegas recently at your karaoke.
Oh, yes.
I was there, and I loved it, and it was one of the things at StarCast that I was most looking forward to. Might seem counterintuitive because, again, you're the foremost authority in many respects of professional wrestling. And, of course, a lot of this interview, most of it, will be professional wrestling related. But before we get to it, since it came up organically, just have to have you talk about your love for music, your love for singing, and where all that comes from and how it is that you exhibit it in your everyday life.
Well, a great question. It comes from my heart, baby, if you will. Since I was a little kid, my parents used to, hey, Billy, get up and sing. And I grew up on the crooners. I grew up on Steve Lawrence, Andy Williams, Dean Martin, Tom Jones, Engelbert Humperdinck, Al Martino, all those names. While my friends were listening to rock and roll bands, I was doing that, and I always sang. Everybody, anytime we went to family gatherings, Billy sang. And there was a singer when I was about 5 years old. His name was Eddie Fisher, Carrie Fisher's father, actually, who was the singer I wanted to be when I was a little kid. And as the years went on, I started singing at little entertainment gigs, and then I eventually got into a singing group. And I like to entertain on my own, basically. I'm not much of a group singer, but I got to go to the classical Catskill Mountains in upstate New York in that area, and for an entire summer to sing at the Concord, Browns, all the great classic hotels there on Old Vaudevillian named Charlie Lowe and his wife Kasha brought a group of kids up there every year, and I made the cut. So that we opened for Red Buttons, Steve Lawrence, Needy Gourmet, and tons of other entertainers up there. And then after that all happened, and I got into the wrestling publishing business, I never stopped doing that. And then back, and you've read my book, so back 25 years ago, I was in Japan, and Haku one night told me about this place after matches that he goes and he sings. I said, what's it called? He says, it's called karaoke. Oh, okay. So we went, and I fell in love with it right away. And I did the song My Way. And during the middle of the song, he said, you just sit at your seat. And he was very polite here in Japan. So I couldn't resist getting up, standing on the bar. I had like a black, tight Elvis type of shirt on. This is before I had my chocolate belly. And I did My Way. And he said, oh, you can't do that. But so we went to 4 or 5 different places that night. And word got around a couple of nights later, Terry Funk took us to a karaoke and live band place. And we walked in, and he said that the people waiting there said, oh, please to sing My Way. And I did My Way, but before I got up to sing, Terry Funk said to me, Apter, these people are Japanese mafia, so if you don't sing good, they're going to cut your nuts off. So, and then when we moved I did karaoke in New York all the time. And then when we moved to Pennsylvania, when the magazines were sold to a company in Pennsylvania, I went to a VFW hall in the neighborhood just to sing one night, and the guy, after I sang, this guy's about 385, 400 pounds, and about 6'4", and he said to me, what's your name? I said, Bill. He said, you Bill Apter? I said, yeah. He says, I haven't seen you in 30 years. I'm the Concrete Cowboy. He used to wrestle on Long Island. Now he's running a karaoke thing. So we started doing a nightclub act around the nursing homes called Just the Two of Us and Nobody Else Makes Three. And it was kind of like a Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis type of thing. But once again, I sang My Way, and I did a lot of crooner tunes, except for the nurses. See, the nurses wouldn't like a song like Moon River Wide. With the nurses, you had it like, yo, Moon River wider than a mile and crossing you instead. You had to rap it, They like that. So, so I still do this.
Rap, and it's that's what really impresses me is that you're not just talented, and it's not just that you can get your audience to connect with you and to resonate with you and you get them emotionally involved, but it's not just how you can get your audience to enjoy what you're doing, but it's also that you're so versatile. Like you were singing country before, and I've heard some of the hip hop and just a bunch of the hybrid stuff. Like sometimes it's country and hip hop. I forget, but I think we were in Rhode Island. I forget, but it's just every time you hit me with something and it's music related, it's amazing. It's a lot of fun because, like, you know, whatever you would least expect. I mean, here comes Apter with.
Well, thank you. I wanted to be on Broadway. Of course, I had idols on Broadway, and an entertainer named Anthony Newley was one of my heroes. And I wanted to be, actually not Broadway, but I wanted to be more like a nightclub singer. You know, they always have a comedian opens up, and then comes out the singer, and the singer does a little bit of comedy and sings standards. And that was always like a dream of mine. So when my book came out, I did one or two like Barnes and Nobles, and I'm doing one, by the way, my local one in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania, August 8th, in Willow Grove, Pennsylvania. But I did like two book discussions, and I said, you know what? This isn't me. I said, why don't I get some stuff? And I started including, like, singing my way in about 20 different wrestler voices, and opening up as a character with a Mil Mascaris mask, an Insane Clown Posse jersey, and rapping "Can't Smile Without You" by Barry Manilow. And his name is Insane. His name is Insane Bill Mascalo. Bill with one L, of course, like Mil Mascaris.
I think that sounds familiar. I think that's what you hit me with in Rhode Island a couple of weeks ago. I did. But what I'm doing now is this one-man show that Scott Wilder promotions books, and I also book it myself at times. But it's a one-man variety show. I sing, do some comedy, I do interaction contests. You know this name. You remember a guy named Taz? Yeah.
Yeah, I know you do. So he gave me a singlet when he left the wrestling bit, when he left ECW, an autographed singlet thanking me and the rest of the gang from PWI for helping make his career successful. And I do a contest. How long does it take a normal human being to get into a Taz singlet? And I get two people up on stage, and whoever wins it gets a prize. So I do that, and we do some little bit of trivia, and I show a lot of videos too. It's like an hour and a half show of fun. You never know what's going to happen. Every show's a little different.
That's awesome.
But to answer your question, I've always wanted to, and so many wrestlers have said that, I've always wanted to be an entertainer. And until the book came out, I really couldn't, in front of the fans, I started saying, these people are, there was Legends of the Ring, the convention that they have in New Jersey twice a year. It's the longest running conventions. I remember Sean Oliver was doing a U-Shoot thing there, and Dixie Carter was late, and they had a packed place of like 200-300 people waiting for Dixie Carter from TNA back then. So one of the guys, the guy running the theme music and all that, he said, wait a minute, you sing, why don't you do a couple of songs? I got up there and sang.
That's awesome.
So that's awesome. Where it's from. Thank you for
asking. Of course. But so obviously you're better known for all of your escapades, everything you've done in your career, all of the accomplishments, all of the innovations, everything you've brought to the journalistic side, whether it's the photography or whether it's just what you've written, and just your spin to the point where you did a lot of segments for TV. I remember growing up, in the 80s, I would watch Pro Wrestling This Week.
Oh, yeah, the Joe Pettis show. Oh, I missed that show so much.
You and me both. And so from there, and just different territories, I think like Florida, was just
and Jim Crockett put me on his almost every Sunday on TBS,
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so that's where a lot of people know you from. And there are so many, I think, younger fans that millennials that maybe wouldn't know about you from there, but would you be able to take us back to the very beginning? And I mean the very beginning as far as it relates to you and wrestling. So even before you were professionally involved.
Yes,
before your first game. But take us back to your childhood.
No, I will do that. But I want to mention that when I go to these conventions, I get like 12 and 13-year-olds that come over to me and say, where do you know me from? They've either seen me as a talking head on the WWE Network or on YouTube, because I'm on YouTube like all the time.
No, you're all over the place, and you're doing the Jarrett Parsons thing. We're going to talk about that on Roku.
On Roku,
still
yeah.
all over the place, and it's amazing. You've been so prolific for what seems like going on a half a century now. Take us back, though, again, to even before that. Take us back to your very, just how you found wrestling and how you knew that wrestling would be something that you would carry with you, something that you would enjoy for a lifetime, both personally and then that you would embark on professionally.
Okay, well, it's in my book, but it starts off with my older brother Paul watching wrestling on TV, black and white TV, in our little house in the Bronx. I had no idea what this was. And he would then prop me up on the bed, and he'd go, move a little to the left. No, a little more to the right. No, move to the left. And he'd yell out, drop kick, and he'd drop kick me off the bed. Almost broke my head 900 times. So I started watching it a little bit with him, Antonino Rocca, Buddy Rogers, Mark Lewin and Don Curtis, the Bastien brothers. And I started watching it on TV almost every week in black and white. And I remember one time my father and I went shopping to Stevens Department Store in Sunnyside, Queens. And the TV was on, and I forgot it was Thursday night. The store was closing, and the Bastien brothers were wrestling Eddie and Jerry Graham on TV, and they had, I think it was the Bastiens, had like $5,000 in silver coins that they were going to give to any team that could beat them, something like this. And the Grahams took the coins and started throwing it out, and the Bastiens beat them bloody, and the store was closing. And I stood there at the gates of Stevens Department Store crying for them to please leave the TVs on for 10 more minutes so I could see the end of this match. And then I didn't live too far from a place called Sunnyside Garden. And in New York State, and you probably know this, you had to be 13 or over to get into wrestling.
Yeah,
also, yes, till a certain time. And also, there were no women wrestlers allowed in New York State at that time.
I think they had a law against I think they even had a law against masked wrestlers, maybe just because they had a law against masks, period. Like, I think it was you weren't able to walk around with your face obstructed in New York or some such.
Well, no, it wasn't that. With the wrestling thing, it was that they wanted to make sure that the guy they examined from the New York State Athletic Commission, the guy that they did the blood pressure, was actually the guy going into the ring.
Got it.
Yeah. So I wanted to see wrestling live and couldn't do it. My dad, who worked in the post office almost his whole life, he was also a sandlot umpire. And during his sandlot umpiring days, he met this guy named Pete Scalzo, who was a former boxer and now a member of the State Athletic Commission. So he said, sure, you can bring Billy. Just come in the side door and sit in the bleachers and don't make it obvious that he's there with you. And that was where the live shows started and where I started going. And I would go into school and I talked to all my friends about what I saw last night. And I would strut around the schoolyard like Buddy Rogers. I drop kick people like Antonino Rocca. And I came up with the Maspeth, where I grew up in Maspeth, Queens. I came up with the Maspeth Championship. So it was with me. And then I published a little newsletter. Like, there was a candy store near Stevens Department Store that you could put in a dime and get these postcard sized pictures of wrestlers, Bruno Sammartino, Primo Carnera, the Amazing Zuma, and I'd get like 10 of them, and I would type 10 wrestling bulletins out and put one of these pictures on each one of them, same content that used to carve in paper.
Wow.
to do this, and I gave it out to my best friends at school. And that was the first publishing thing I was ever involved in. So that's where the wrestling thing came from. And it was from my brother, and then my dad, once I got into the business, my dad loved it so much when he moved down to Florida, when he and my mother moved down to Florida. I called Eddie Graham, and I said, my dad's moving down there. He said, well, we'll put him at the timekeeper's table every week in West Palm Beach. Just have him wear like a bright sport jacket and nice pants and white shoes, and, you know, it'll look like he runs the place. And everybody thought my father ran the place down there.
That's tremendous.
Yeah. I haven't told these stories. This is, nobody's ever asked me about the beginning, but that was it.
Let me tell
you. By the way, a terrifying moment for my parents, because I used to love doing like imitations of Buddy Rogers, and I would, this guy's got no brains. And for my bar mitzvah speech, the beginning of it was, dear parents, beloved grandparents, relatives, and friends. And then on this day of my bar mitzvah, and I'd go through, dear parents, at the rehearsals, dear parents, beloved grandparents, relatives, friends, you know something, I might be 13 years old, Pally, and I would do that, and my parents were terrified I was going to do that at my bar mitzvah, but I didn't.
That's tremendous.
They also thought I was Jewish, which is incredible.
But, I want to tell you how much I appreciate you doing the show, just in general at all, because the format is essentially interview, and some of it's more serious, and some of it's going to be more silly, more ridiculous, but it is essentially question and answer. And I really appreciate, I want to let everybody know you've got a book out there that I can't recommend strongly enough. If you don't read wrestling books, let this be the first one that you do read.
Well, there's also the audio version, too, on Audible.
So it's easy. So now there's no reason why people can't go ahead but honestly, if you're somebody who reads wrestling books and somehow you've skipped this one so far, you have to get your hands on it. And like Bill says, there's an audio version. If you are not, again, seriously, if you're not in the habit yet of reading wrestling books, you haven't started and you're wondering what's a good first one that you should grab this one, because, dude, your take on wrestling.
And as you know, the title of it is Wrestling Fixed. I didn't know it was broken. And after all these years, the book company, ECW Press, let's do your book, Bill Apter says. I said, no. I said, I got it. It's a joke I've been using since I got into the business. And people would ask me, is wrestling fixed? I'd say, I didn't know it was broken. And then I'd walk away. And I said, it's a catchphrase, like all the wrestlers use. You got to have a catchphrase.
There you go. But I can't recommend it strongly enough. It's amazing.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that.
But I guess what I mean to say is, again, thank you for being on the show, because, you're telling these stories and you're sharing them, very graciously. And I want people, I don't want you to be doing it to your own demise. I don't want you to be doing it to your own.
No, I'm enjoying this.
I'm glad that you're able to do the show and kind of put it all out there. So people, no matter how much you hear in this hour or so from Bill Apter, just know that there is tons more around the corner. If you like what you hear, you've got to get the book, because this is just going to be a drop in the ocean. It's going to be the appetizer. The book is the entree.
You know what the book is? Me telling stories. People hear my voice while they're reading the book. And Jim Cornette was the only one. He says, Bill Apter's book sucks. And people say, why? He says, he doesn't knock anybody. It's a friendly book. It's a friendly book.
That's good. That's good. Hey, listen, there's strength in that. When you can be successful and write a book that's entertaining and informative, and that's something that people really need to, get in front of, And when it's one that doesn't throw people under the bus, and you're not having to, burn a lot of bridges and that kind of thing. I think
No, wait a minute. No one's thrown under the bus. They're thrown under the 7 train, which is where Sunnyside Garden was, right on Queens Boulevard.
That's official. Bill, so tell me, it sounds like when you get into the wrestling business, it's your dream job. I mean, you're living the dream. You're doing exactly what you ever wanted to do because, like you said, you're a kid in the schoolyard, and at school you're self-publishing this newsletter of sorts, this bulletin, and then you get to do it on the grandest stage of them all for that kind of thing, and that would be, along the lines of Pro Wrestling Illustrated and the ilk and everything that you were able to get yourself involved with in the 1970s, I believe it was. Tell us a little bit about how you got hired and how this went from something that you did at school to something that you were able to do for a living.
Great question. I had gone to these shows at Sunnyside Garden, and there was a promoter, Mike Rosenberg, who was the local promoter, and the guy that ran the shows for Vincent Gann Sr., his name was Oscar Keneal. And nobody could understand Oscar. I remember calling Mike Rosenberg one day saying, I'd like to do an interview with some wrestlers. And he says, hold on, I'll put you on with Oscar. Oh, he was from Brazil. Nobody could understand a thing he said. So at this time, he said, what do you want to do? The interview for what? At that time, I was buying time. I think it was $35 for an hour on WHBI 105.9 FM in New York. No, it was for like 30 minutes. And I did a 5-minute wrestling show, which I co-brokered with someone else for like $12. I paid $13 a bed. And I told them that I did a radio show, and I'm trying to get published in a wrestling magazine. So Oscar said, which meant come down there. And he let me do an interview with the Mongols and several other wrestlers there. And I sent the pictures with a little Instamatic camera and a transcribed interview to Wrestling Review, REVUE, Wrestling Review magazine. And I got a note back that they were going to publish it. And it took them several months to publish it. The Mongols interview by Bill Apter, radio personality. And they told me they were going to pay me $25 for this thing. I hadn't gotten a check at all. And I wasn't doing this for money at all. And I was at the newsstand looking at the story. And next to it were these sensationalism magazines, The Wrestler and Inside Wrestling. They were like the New York Post or the National Enquirer of wrestling magazines. And I picked them up and I said, I saw the name in the staff box of the publisher is Stanley Weston. Now, I bought Wrestling Review, was the first magazine I bought in 1963. I had the first issue. I got it at Sunnyside Garden. They were selling it there. But Stanley Weston was the publisher there. The publisher that I sent it into was a guy named Lou Eskin. The Weston had sold the magazine over to him. I said, you know what? This Stanley Weston is the guy that used to do Wrestling Review, and that's when that magazine was classy with centerfolds and color pictures. I'm going to, you know what, next time I do this, I'm going to send pictures to him and a letter. There was no email back then. So I did that. And I sent him some pictures that I took from the stands and stuff that I did in the dressing room with some of the wrestlers. And he sent me back a letter wanting to know how I got in the dressing room. I said, well, I do a radio show. So he called me, and we met at the Men's Grill at the Biltmore Hotel at Grand Central Station in New York. And he was sitting at this classy restaurant, and he pulls out this magazine with the Wrestler magazine, never forgot this, with the bloody picture, full cover of Bobby Heenan. Oh my God, Bobby, what happened to your face? And I took it from him and I looked at it. He says, hold it down, there's classy people here. He says, do you know why there's blood on the cover? And in the inset was a sexy looking girl the two things that sell wrestling magazines are sex and blood. I guess, he knew his business. So I told him that I was never paid by Lou Eskin. It really didn't matter to me. Eventually I got a check. And he told me he was looking for somebody. Now, I was not a writer, Joel, at all. I knew nothing about writing at all. And he brought me out to his office, which was in his house in Rockville Center, Long Island, New York. And after my first couple of stories, he says, "Well, you're not a writer, are you?" I said, "No. I'm more photography-based, etc." He says, "You know what's wrong with these stories you're doing and the columns I'm trying to put you on? Nobody can hear your voice. You're trying to be intelligent and make like a writer." But once he said that, things changed. Those next few things that I wrote, I didn't care about the grammar or anything. I wanted him to hear my voice. That was great advice from him, right? So he told me, he showed me where the photo files were down in his basement of his house, and I started filing photos. All these photos I've seen in the magazines for years, I was now filing them. And photographers would send in film, black and white. For you people listening to this who you don't know what film is, please just Google it and you'll see what it looks like there. That was before digital cameras, of course. And I told him, I said, my uncle taught me how to develop film in his bathroom when I was a kid. I can do it. You're not touching this film. If you ruin it, we've lost everything. So he and his wife went on a trip to Greece for 3 weeks. When he came back, I had like 50 rolls of film developed and printed in the darkroom. And that's part one of how this hooked up. The most important, are you still there?
I am.
I just want to make sure. The most important thing, you're such a great audience. The most important thing, though, that I did for the magazines was not one photo I took. It was not one column or story that I wrote. The most important thing was my Rolodex, because the guys in the business accepted me. And back then, it was like the mafia. You had to know someone to get in. And I knew Mr. Weston, who was very good friends with Ricky Starr, Al Costello, the Fabulous Kangaroos. And there were a lot of people who didn't like Mr. Weston because some of the stuff that he wrote. And a lot of the wrestlers, when they found out I worked for him, didn't want to talk to me, like Bruno Sammartino, who told me, this Stanley Weston guy wrote a life story about me, and he said that my sister killed a Nazi with a bayonet, and he was very upset because he had a true life story there. And I went back to Mr. Weston the next day, and I said that Bruno was, he doesn't want to cooperate or anything, and he says that was a great story. I said, right, but it embarrassed him. So I went back and I told Bruno I would do a Q&A with him, and that may have been the very first shoot interview in any of the wrestling magazines, and that got me started. Then Bruno put me over, and then Vince McMahon Sr. also had a war with Stanley Weston over several things, and I was able to turn that around too. So the guys in the business started to like me, and then I became that guy that, hey, this guy can get you publicity. This is before PWI. This is the Wrestler and Inside Wrestling. And then a lot of the promoters, when Mr. Weston was sending me to different cities, like Vern Gagne, said, you're wearing a suit and tie. No, none of these photographers ever come around like this. Well, maybe you can present an award or something on our TV show, or just stand next to the announcer and we say we have this reporter from New York here. It'll mean a lot. So, bingo, I want to be in the entertainment field, getting on TV. So that's how it happened. But the most important thing was that the people in the business accepted me for the most part, and it was me and George Napolitano, pretty much, and this guy named Paul Heyman, I think, do the Grand Wizard very well. Yeah, and but George and I became the two guys that the guys in the business really trusted through the years, and even to today, I get calls sometimes from some of the contemporary guys who I'm shocked know me and like, hey, you still, I'd love to do an interview with you or something like that. So yeah, it's the acceptance of people who did not want to talk to someone they didn't know wasn't going to tear them apart in an interview or something.
Like
a lot of wrestlers, Joe, would say to me, you guys write the story, just check it with me, because you do a better job of saying what my persona should be saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I was saying before, I mean, I don't want you to, kind of tell too many tales out of school from what's in your book. I want you to keep what's in the book.
Actually, I just told you more than what's in the book. This is exclusive.
I appreciate it.
This is a stud muffin exclusive.
Well, the thing of it is, I mean, not to be that guy, and but honestly, I don't know. I mean, if it's not too much to ask, because I know we've spoken about this, I think, once before on the phone, and it was an unbelievable story you had to tell. And again, I don't want you to tell too much of what's in the book.
Well, wait, you're not taping this, are you?
No, not at all. No, of course not.
Okay.
If I am, it's for my own personal use, of course.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
But what I'm curious, if you can share, if you can indulge me with this, because I am one of the biggest Andy Kaufman fans, one of the biggest.
Wait a minute! Stop! You're a New Yorker, right?
Right.
It's Kaufman.
Andy Kaufman.
We're
So
New
I'm one of the biggest Andy Kaufman files, and I love everything that the guy's ever done and that he's ever touched, and I just think he's a genius and was ahead of his time, and everything else that everybody says about him. But I've always had an affinity for him and a place in my heart for him. And
he would have loved you. He would have loved you.
Thank you for saying that. That means a lot. I guess, if it's not too much to ask, because I don't know if you'll remember, but we spoke on the phone about this. But the same way you say that the boys had a personal relationship with you, they trusted you as a liaison or as a go-between, but really more so than that, because that sounds almost kind of, but a lot of the boys saw you not even so much as a go-between or a liaison, but from what I've come to see, a lot of the boys see you as a friend, as a confidant.
Yeah.
And you've told me on the phone about it was you and Andy Kaufman and Lawler, and Andy Kaufman wanting to get involved with wrestling and kind of not having the luck up here in the New York area to be able to do it in Vince McMahon Sr.'s territory, but you really wanted him to kind of live his wrestling dream, and you wanted to see if you could help him out. Again, I know that this is,
No. I'll give you the.
And not
No. I'll give you the shorthand version. I was backstage. Andy used to come to the shows at Madison Square Garden, and he was always in the dressing room area. And one night he was talking with Vince McMahon Sr. and Vince was like, Vince was very polite to him, etc. And somewhere during the evening, before the matches, Vince McMahon said, "Listen, this guy's a nice boy and all this, but we're not going to do anything. He wants to get him to wrestle. We can't." So Andy knew me from the magazines. He was a fan of the magazine. And even though there was no internet back then, my picture was in the magazine a lot. He said to me, "What are you doing for the matches?" He wanted to go talk wrestling with someone. And I said, "I go home." He said, "Where do you live?" I said, "I live in Queens." He said, "How do you get there?" I said, "I take the E train or the F train." He said, "Can I go home with you?" Now picture this. There's the guy that's starring in Taxi, the hit TV show, one of the top 10 TV shows, and I'm riding on the way home with him. People go, "That's Eddie. That's Eddie." So we get up to my apartment. I was living at that time with a Australian girl wrestler by the name of Susan Sexton. And we open the door and she goes, "Now, are we allowed to use 4-letter words on this show?"
You're allowed and encouraged. As a matter of fact, if you don't use at least one, I'm not sure that we can use the interview.
Well, you're not taping it anyway, so it doesn't matter.
That's a good thing I'm not taping it, right?
So every other word out of Susan Sexton's mouth was the F-bomb. Where are we eating tonight? Oh, going to the fucking diner. This type of thing. So I bring her here. She looks at me, oh, it's fucking Andy Kaufman. What are you doing here? So for hours we're sitting on the couch talking about wrestling. He wanted to be Buddy Rogers. He wanted to be Fred Blassie. And finally, after about an hour and a half, Suzanne says, that's all you can talk about, this fucking wrestling stuff, even though she was in the business. And she's not leaving. So she went into the bedroom, put on her headphones, blasted the Ramones, Gabba Gabba Hey, and that was the last we saw of her that night. So, by the way, I tell these stories in my one-man show, too, so make sure you come and see me soon. So I'm now sitting there on the couch with him, and I said, Vince McMahon doesn't want any part of this, but I have a friend in Memphis, and that crew there is way ahead of the wrestling thing. They have monsters like Frankenstein and the Wolfman. I could just see you down there insulting people with your Elvis imitation. I said, a friend of mine, Jerry Lawler, he said, I read about him in the magazine. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, Memphis time. It was like 2 a.m. Eastern time in Queens. I said, let's call him. He said, you're going to call him this late? And I said, he's probably just getting home. They called Lawler on a regular telephone. He said, you got Andy Kaufman, the guy from Taxi, in your roach-infested apartment? I said, yeah. And I put him on the phone, and that put the key in the ignition, and Andy went down there like a couple of days later. And that started it. And I played this up big to Mr. Weston, to my boss. We're not putting any comedians in the magazine. He totally downplayed this whole thing that became the real first wave of sports entertainment, if you really think about it. And Jerry Lawler told me years later that the one storyline that Vince Jr. would have loved to have had was that thing with Andy Kaufman. And I'm the guy who put the key in the ignition to make it happen.
Bill, in addition to being followed home and tagged along on the subway by Andy Kaufman, in addition to being an American karaoke innovator, performing My Way, under penalty of death to likely members of the Yakuza, in addition to things like that, what, in your time in the wrestling business, what one or two or three, whatever comes to mind, what are the strangest things? What could you say is some of the strangest things that have ever happened to you?
Well, again, it's in my book, The Night Randy Savage, I literally thought was going to kill me. But that's a story you have to read in the book. That was very strange. The night Nitro, when they were at war, when WCW and WWE were against each other in the war, and Shane McMahon showed up on WCW. That was very strange. Personally strange would have been just various traveling with various wrestlers who were speed demons in cars, or taking me to their home where 60% of the guy's home was filled with pornography, and a whole stack of phonograph records. No, but but nothing ultra strange. Pretty much the guys, the people in the business, no matter how weird they might have been, pretty much kept very straight-laced with me.
All right. Now, Bill, we've got some, now that some of the more ridiculous, now that some of the wrestling talk and some of the nonsense is out of the way, now we can get to some of the serious questions. We can get to where I become a journalist, and we can ask you the deep and thoughtful matters of the day, the things that really matter, the things that we want to know from Bill Apter personally.
All right, let me wipe the sweat from my brow here.
All right.
Okay, I'm ready.
Here is the first one.
Oh my God.
You run into President Donald Trump, and it is your task that you must say something to him, and it must be apolitical. what do you comment to President
You're
Trump?
saying it must be a political comment?
No, it must be absolutely not political.
Oh, are you still in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Awesome. That's a good one. I want your...
And by the and is your hair really blonde?
Right. Is that what it is? It's blonde, isn't it? It's kind of...
I think so.
Yeah. It's some form of, strawberry blonde.
Yes,
something.
yes.
I want your take on this. And you're somebody, because you do have kind of, not just when you write, you don't just have kind of the verbiage, but you've also got a flavor, right? This is going back to when your boss told you that you kind of, as a writer, your voice is what's really, so I want to hear this in your personal voice, and I'd like for you basically to do kind of an Apter's Alley and give your take on this. Why is it that Goofy stands erect while Pluto remains on all fours? I mean, they're both dogs.
It was in the lineage of his family. His grandfather was whipped into standing straight by his owner, and so it went. Actually, it was his great grandfather. So his grandfather just kind of came out that way because of his father. So it was basically it was inherent. You didn't know that?
No, I just wanted to make sure. I mean, it's not a function of whether I knew it or not. I wanted to hear it from you. I mean, nothing that I know is necessarily true or false.
And by the way,
it's made true by you confirming it.
Well, and Pluto was on a different planet. I get my Jerry Lewis laugh in there. Go ahead.
Bill, if you had to wear one Halloween costume every day for the rest of your life, what would it be?
No mascara. Same thing I do every year.
Well played, sir.
I have the mask that he wrestled in when he broke the masked fan in New York at the Garden. He gave me the
Is that
mask.
right? Oh, my gosh.
Yes, I have it. I'll bring it next time I see you.
My gosh. That's amazing.
Is it true that Mil Mascaris' real name is Mel Moskowitz? Somebody told me that. Anyway, no, I'm sorry. You're the interviewer.
I think that would only be, again, made true if you said so, which you may have just done. Bill, to get back to wrestling as a way of kind of coming full circle and wrapping this up, as somebody who was a fan as a child and had an affinity for wrestling, and it got into your blood and it sank its claws in, and you went ahead and you published the Bulletin, and then this is something that you wound up essentially doing for a living. You've written the book, but you've done so much more. I mean, it's, again, multiple halls of fame, and everybody knows who you are, and you've really made your name and just a living and a career in profession.
Do you know how I did that, though? Really?
Tell me.
I had business cards printed. That's what did it.
Is that all it took?
Yes. That was
But my question is, what? Because look, wrestling's changed. Not just that the players have changed. That goes without saying. But wrestling itself has changed. Definitely, in more than one way. And the wrestling of 2019 is not the wrestling of 1959, 1969. It's changed. Mm-hmm. But what hasn't changed, seemingly, is your passion and your love for it. And as somebody who has made not just a living, but a life in wrestling and through wrestling, can you let us know how it is that wrestling did get into your blood with that magnitude, with that kind of ferocity, and what it is essentially about wrestling that you know that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, no matter what, wrestling is always going to be something that helps to define who you are?
Well, no matter how it's changed, where it evolved into sports entertainment, it's still the basic premise of 4 corners, or if it's Impact Wrestling, maybe 6 corners. So the lineage of what it's based upon is still there. And I'm still hanging on to the lineage. And a lot of people have become very bitter about what it has become in the past 20, 30 years, and they're left behind. My feeling is if you don't grow with what the product is, which changes within time as to social things that happen in the news, things evolve. Entertainment, music evolves. So if you still want to be a part of it, you have to evolve with it and accept what it is. And if you hate it, let it go. Okay? But I still feel back from when I was a kid in the 60s through today, that lineage of people going to the matches with their sons and daughters, people, when you pass, you stand in where the kids are talking at the school bus the night after Monday Night Raw, they're all talking about wrestling and they're still believing what it is. So there is a certain aspect of that lineage back from when I started watching that's still there today. On the internet, most people go on there to write about it, criticize it, etc., but they're not the fan that these companies are looking to grab hold of. It's the kids at the bus stop that I always say that's the wrestling fan that I was. That fan is still here today, enjoying what this is today.
That makes perfect sense.
Does that make sense?
No, it really does. It does. Bill, tell everybody who wants to get a hold of your book, whether, like you said, give them the hard book, the physical book, and then for some people who prefer audiobooks, but just let everybody know who's listening who would want to read the book and find out all of the nuggets of just gold and joy and wisdom and just wrestling fun that are in the book.
Well, thank you. Thank
just
you.
let them know.
The book came out in 2015. The book is available on Amazon or at your favorite booksellers. And it's called Is Wrestling Fixed? What's the answer, Joel?
I didn't know it was broken.
I didn't know it was broken. That's correct. And I still don't know it's broken as I started off at the beginning here. I still love it. Or you can get the audio book on Audible, or you can get them both. And if you want a signed copy and you're not at one of my physically live shows, go to my Twitter at Apter One Wrestling. That's the number 1, not the word. Apter One Wrestling, and DM me or just tweet me that you bought the book. Show a picture of you with it, and I will send you an autograph sticker, personal autograph sticker that you can adhere onto the first page, personalized to you. I'm also still doing videos every few nights on it's the number OneWrestlingVideo.com. It's a website, OneWrestlingVideo.com, and still running the OneWrestling.com news site, and I'm on the Jarrett Parsons network on Roku, where you can see a lot of the old territories and my Roku show every few weeks. And Mr. Gertner, you were wonderful in your segment, and I should be taping my next Roku show and having you on it again somewhere at the end of this week.
Thank you very much. It's been a blast. It's been an honor, first of all, but then personally, it's been a blast.
Oh, for me too. And by the way, I didn't want to forget this, that there was a promotion. You and I and J.J. Dillon did commentary for Brooklyn many, many years ago, and I had a great time working with you and J.J.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that was a highlight of my career, and
thank you.
And gosh, I mean, I couldn't have ever imagined when I started announcing that I would ever be blessed with the opportunity of working with you and also with JJ. It was definitely a highlight of my career, and I definitely felt blessed that night.
Thank you. I was glad to have you with us, and I appreciate you having me on your Eargasm show, and
Thank you, sir.
would love to do it again.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that more than you know. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your stories. Everybody get the book. Stay in touch with Bill on Twitter. Find out what he's doing. Get the Jarrett Parsons channel. Put it on your Roku. And Bill just continues to contribute to the world of professional wrestling.
No, by the way, on the Roku shows, I'm now slowly adding those to the OneWrestlingVideo.com website.
Very nice.
You can catch some of them there, too.
Very nice. Everybody give those a watch. Stay in touch with Bill on Twitter. Get the book. And ladies and gentlemen, an absolute pleasure, as it always is, to spend some time and to speak and to exchange stories and just have some fun and share the love with Bill Apter. Bill, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, and we'll see you at the matches.
And we'll be back with more 69-minute Eargasm after this.
Oftentimes, we receive some correspondence from you, the listeners of the 69-minute Eargasm. We compile these into what we call our mailbag. That's, of course, M-A-L-E bag. And it can be counted on to contain various and sundry pearls and gems that can at any moment be whipped out and unleashed upon you, the unsuspecting listening public. Today, we've been asked, Dear 69-minute Eargasm, it is my dream and life's mission to get involved in the business and succeed as a professional wrestler. What would you suggest is the best way to go about it? To answer that very question, we have reached out to a young, up-and-coming rising star in the world of professional wrestling, Ethan H.D., whose pinned tweet I recently saw, and it remarkably takes on this very subject. Here's Ethan.
Thank you, Joel. I know there's a lot of you out there who want to know what it takes to become a professional wrestler, and I've had the opportunity to train some of the best wrestlers in the world. Here's the best advice I can give anybody who wants to truly make it in this industry. The first thing you have to understand is a lot of wrestlers are going to tell you you need to find a reputable school. I'm going to be honest, it's not really necessary. The best way to break in is to locate the nearest wrestling school you can find the head trainer, and challenge him to a fight. Let him know if you win, you take over his school, and if he wins, you'll give him the large novelty check for $25,000 that you brought with you. Wrestling logic dictates that he'll accept. Defeat him by any means necessary to take control of that school. Tell all the students that saw you that day they work for you now, and if they choose to leave, they will suffer the same fate as their trainer. From there, find the closest indie wrestling promotion, show up with your new gang of goons, and do basically what the Nexus did, but for real, and maybe with chainsaws. Of course, this will cause the promoter to send out all the boys from the locker room, and you and your crew will have to fight them. Take advantage of this, and during the fracas, kidnap his son. Now, head back to your school with the rest of your gang and your 6-year-old cargo. This is one of the best ways to get booked, because now you have something that almost all promoters want: their child. From there, wait 3 days so you don't seem desperate, and reach out to the promoter offering to make a deal. His child in exchange for the championship of the company. Agree to meet on neutral territory at a bridge overlooking water. When the promoter arrives, have his son bound and gagged in a burlap sack. When you go for the exchange, make sure the promoter hands you the championship before you hand over the child, as promoters are known to be shady and sometimes will short the boys. Now that you have what you want, go ahead and toss the son, burlap sack and all, into the body of water below. The promoter will plunge in after him in hopes to save his son, giving you ample time to leave with the championship you have worked so hard for. By the time the promoter realizes the sack was just full of wet towels and his son has been safe this whole time, you now have enough leverage to take your act on the road. Now, it's important to understand, in wrestling, it's a hard business. You're going to spend a lot of time on the road and kidnap a lot of children in hopes of one day getting an opportunity to make some real money. Just understand it'll all be worth it when you're standing there at WrestleMania, waiting for your music to hit, holding Shane McMahon in a burlap sack, getting ready to go out and become the WWE champion. If you want to be a wrestler, that's what it takes to be a professional wrestler. Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Ethan. More than you know. And now, the more you know. You've asked and you have found the way. Don't be intimidated. It's what we all who have come before you have done. And we will have more time-tested wisdom and time-honored random audio Shiza Fiesta Gold after this. With our regular history segment, talking about everything happening on this date in pro wrestling. Ladies and gentlemen, wrestling historian, archivist, wrestling proponent, I give to you Mr. John Pantozzi.
Thank you, Joel. Well, let's say this. July 22nd was a very busy day in wrestling history. If we talked about all the title changes that happened on July 22nd, it would take over an hour. So I've pulled out a few. We'll start by going back to 1942 at Riverview Park in Des Moines, Iowa. The NWA World Heavyweight Champ Bill Longson defeated Orville Brown to capture Brown's claim to the World Heavyweight title in a 2 out of 3 fall bout. We jump to 1960 where Danny Hodge won the NWA World Junior Heavyweight title by defeating Angelo Savoldi in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. In 1964, the Destroyer defeated Dick the Bruiser to win the WWA World Heavyweight title in Los Angeles, California. Back in the early 60s, that was one of the big world titles. Now, here's a little-known bout. Gorilla Monsoon won the World Wrestling Council North American Heavyweight title by defeating Bruno Sammartino in San Juan, Puerto Rico. I've searched for the finish of that match, but cannot find it. I don't know how that match ended. 1989, in Ishikawa, Japan, Jumbo Tsuruta and Yoshiaki Yatsu defeated Stan Hansen and Genichiro Tenryu to win the All Japan Pro Wrestling Unified World Tag Team title. Now, 1994 was a busy year with Vince McMahon, but July 22nd, after 16 hours of deliberation, a jury found Vince not guilty of conspiracy to distribute steroids to wrestlers. Our final date in 2001 in Cleveland, Ohio, at the WWF Invasion pay-per-view, Team ECW, WCW, headed up by Paul Heyman with Shane and Stephanie McMahon. The team consisted of Booker T, the Dudley Boys, Diamond Dallas Page, and Rhino, defeated Vince McMahon's Team WWF, which consisted of Kurt Angle, Steve Austin, Chris Jericho, Kane, and The Undertaker. And that'll wrap it up for July 22nd.
Thank you very much, John. And we'll have more 69-minute eargasm after this.
WrestleMania 2 is history, and this man is still the Intercontinental Champion. He's from Sarasota, Florida. What's with the broom? Wait a minute. What is the
professional wrestling completely clean? Oh yeah, doing the thing, yeah, like nobody ever does before. Yeah, Tito Santana, it's been a while since I saw you in the Boston Garden. And I think that you believe that even though you're headhunting, that you can't beat the Macho Man Randy Savage. And you know Hulk Hogan? Yeah, if he wants to keep an eye on me, don't look behind you, Hulk Hogan. No, don't look in front. Don't look to the sides. Look straight up, because I'm right on top of you. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, Elizabeth. My dear, how are you? You look
fine.
gorgeous as usual.
Thank you very much.
Well, you're more than welcome. How are things going for you?
Oh, great. Everything's super.
When you get into New York City, you have an opportunity to do a little shopping.
Oh, yes.
Browsing.
I really enjoy that. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Excuse me, just let me interrupt just for a second. I'm just standing here. I'm holding a gold belt, the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship belt. I'm only the champion. You guys got a conversation going. You're
We're talking
back
about a
and
few
forth.
things.
It's like the most important man in the world standing here, and you got a conversation going with each other. Now
We could
explain
talk
to me
about
why.
you.
Put that thing down. Don't degrade the champion at any time. A man in my position could never afford to look ridiculous. Do you understand that? Tell Tito Santana that, and tell Hulk Hogan that. And Elizabeth, I think I need to tell you something right now. You don't understand who you're
thank you
with
very
right
much.
now. Do you know who you're with?
Thank you very much.
You're with me. The Macho Man, Randy Savage. Goodbye.